Welcome to The Trouble with Football, the show where football's irritations get the spotlight they deserve. Each episode, I sit down with a fellow fan who has a bone to pick about the powers that be and the beautiful game. Big or small, serious or stupid, no topic is off limits. Today, my guest with a gripe is Amelia Beltrao. Now, Amelia is a talkSport news presenter and reporter covering events including Wimbledon, Silverstone and, of course, Premier League football. You can hear her presenting the news and sport on either The Breakfast Show with Jeff Stelling, Ali McCoist and Alan Brazil, or on Drive Time with Andy Goldstein and Darren Bent. Amelia is also a Chelsea fan, and when she's not on talkSport, you can often see her on her Instagram and TikTok accounts offering news and insights about Chelsea and, of course, the wider sports landscape. So, Amelia, welcome to Trouble with Football. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. First of all, I suppose where I start with everyone is with the football team and who you support. So as I mentioned, you're a Chelsea fan. So the first obvious question is, tell me about how you became a Chelsea fan, how your love of Chelsea became the big relationship in your life.
Well, I know typically with Chelsea fans, everyone goes, oh, they're just glory hunters. But I was actually born and raised in the realms of Chelsea. So I'd like to start with that. I was actually born in Chelsea Westminster Hospital. So there's always deep-rooted love for it there. My dad is a Chelsea fan, but it's quite funny because my mum's Arsenal. So it would have gone either one of two ways. So my brother's Arsenal, but then my dad and I are Chelsea.
Wow.
My best friend growing up, she was a massive Chelsea fan and her whole family are Chelsea and they have season tickets. So I've always been very fortunate that if her dad and his brother decided they didn't want to go to that particular game, I would then go with my best friend. But then equally, I'd be also going to games with my dad. And it wasn't actually a massive, massive love when I was growing up as a kid. Of course, it was there in the background, but it's actually only really in the last 5 to 10 years that it's really solidified for me. And just to add as well with the born and raised, my school is actually behind Stamford Bridge. So as Chelsea fans come through Fulham Broadway, my school, it's not the most pretty looking building, but it's there to the right. If you see some big poles, if any Chelsea fans know, there's some big bars sort of thing. That was my old school. So yeah.
Okay. I think you definitely qualify as a Chelsea fan, born and bred.
Thank you.
That's fine. Hands up.
Do you know what's quite funny as well? A little funny story. My mum, we lived in southwest London and my mum was quite picky about which hospitals us kids were born in. So even though our closest hospital was St. George's, she said to my dad, no, we're going to Chelsea because I want Chelsea on the passports. So if you look on our passports, all of us kids have got Chelsea.
Love that. That's devotion. That is by your mum. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
That's
you very
much.
Good.
I like that. Fair enough. Well, look, let's keep on the train of Chelsea for a minute. Obviously, the last couple of years, Chelsea have been, they've been crowned Club World Cup champions. They won the Europa Conference League. But also, they've had a bit of a revolving door in the manager's office, let's put it that way. So how does it feel at the moment being a Chelsea fan?
Funnily enough, one of the topics of conversation that was surrounding the office today that I just couldn't shake my head around was that within the last 12 months, we beat PSG 3-0. How did that happen?
Yeah.
PSG are going into the Champions League final, obviously against Arsenal, and to think we beat them 3-0 less than 12 months ago, which is just beyond me.
It is crazy. It's like it's like knockout round PSG is completely different to any other PSG that you find.
I think it's more that Chelsea are very much different to how they were.
I didn't want to say
that. I think probably the general consensus amongst Chelsea fans at the moment is we kind of just want the season to end tomorrow.
Well, look, in that case, let's take off that miserable subject for a second and take you away from it. Let's talk about your day job and talkSport. We talk about it sort of quite blasé, but actually it's a big thing. You are a news reader of sports and news, obviously, but you do The Breakfast Show, you do Drive Time. It's obviously hard work and it's your job, but it sounds like a bit of fun as well. How does it feel to you doing it?
It is a very fun place to work, I will admit that. Yeah, it's definitely not your normal type office where I've worked in a lot of places before I've started working here full time. So I've had my fair share of what it looks like to be in an office space, and talkSport is just indescribable in terms of how just nonchalant it can be, sort of thing. Like, there is an argument about football about 3 times a day, different corners of the newsroom. We are very fortunate as well. We are looked after. We get sweets on a Friday. We even get beers on a Friday.
Wow.
There's a dartboard in a meeting room. There's a punching bag by the front desk. Like, it's a very unusual place to work, and it's kind of, I think everyone wants to keep talkSport lighthearted. Obviously, you
Yeah.
do have to delve into some serious stories, but the idea is radio is meant to be fun. It's meant to be sort of speaking to one person to another across the radio, and you want to make it a bit of lighthearted fun. And I think that very much translates throughout the whole office space.
There's been a big change recently as well with talkSport. You say it's radio, but it's video now. It's
We're
streaming.
going visual.
It's on
Yes.
YouTube. It's got podcasts. It's got all sorts of things going on. And even, I can flip on the talkSport app and suddenly I can click a button. I can see everyone talking in the studio. How does that feel for you? Because you've signed up presumably as a radio newsreader, not a
It
video
is.
one. So how does
I
that work
know.
for you?
I mean, it's quite glam sometimes for me because I get to go in. I'm like, oh, I'm going to hair and makeup today. Look at me going in front of the telly.
Fair enough.
um, but it was definitely a big transition in terms of for everyone in the office because it was like, right, everyone needs to now learn a whole new skill set, basically. I was very fortunate in the position where I actually did used to be a TV producer. So for me, actually making that adaptation came quite naturally and quickly for me.
Right.
Um, but it is very exciting, and I think that is going to be sort of the pathway where it is just going to be expanding more and more. We're going to be doing more stuff onto YouTube, onto smart TV, just kind of making that progression where it will essentially become some kind of TV station. But obviously, predominantly and first and foremost, it will always be the radio listeners are prioritized.
I hope so, because I think something about radio and sport is such a beautiful marriage that I think we need to try and keep that tradition as much as possible. Look, I'm getting on my soapbox now. That's not the point of this. Um, I'm just going to ask you mentioned you were a producer beforehand, just that journey of how you got to where you are now. Sort of, if you could touch on a couple of things. I'm sure there's people out there listening thinking, oh, how do I do that? How did you get to where you are now?
It took a lot of graft. I will say that. So it's not easy getting into where I work, where I just kind of, for so many years, I just wanted to have as many fingers in so many pies. So I did journalism at uni, and I was very fortunate enough that I managed to get a job as a runner at Sky. And even though I was at university in Cardiff doing journalism, during my holidays when I came back to London, I would then go and work those crazy night shifts at Sky as a runner. So I'd make a little bit of pocket money basically for myself, but then I also had my foot in the door. Um, then I finished uni. I did a postmasters kind of thing
Right.
in journalism. Did that. Was still working at Sky at the time. And it was then just a matter of for years on after that saying like, right, let's apply to this job. Let's go to here. And I covered some maternity leave as a social media producer for Talk Radio, which is on the same floor as talkSport, but a different station. And I remember being in that building. I was like, I need to come back here, even though I was just covering maternity cover. I need to be back in this building. And I always said to myself that I wanted to get some writing under my belt. It's like, right, how do I get back in this building?
Yeah.
So I applied to work at the Sun. I got a job as at working at the Sun. So I did a bit of writing there for a year. I was then, once I was back in the building, went storming back upstairs and like, hi, can I please do some news reading for you guys? Can I be a producer? So I was producing, news reading, also working at another radio station. So I had fingers and many pies, just kind of making sure that I had my foot in the door within that building. Talk Radio then got upgraded into a TV station, hence why I then became a TV producer. And within that, they then kind of put me on sport. They kind of specialized me as the sports producer. So that was quite a natural progression. And then it got to a point where both Talk TV and Talk Sport said, actually, we'd like to have you full time. Which one do you want to pick? And I said, well, I love producing, but news reading is my passion. And I think
Yeah.
I want to stick with TalkSport. And I was very fortunate in that decision that I did do that, because exactly a month into my new contract, Talk TV collapsed. So I dodged the biggest bullet there.
Wow.
And that was just over 2 years ago. And yeah, here I am still at talkSport.
Well, it's fantastic, and it proves that hard work and saying yes to mostly things
Saying
it
yes,
seems to work.
making sure you make a good impression on every place that you step into. Like, it's not just about like working hard, but actually showing that you're very personable. There's more to you,
Yeah.
have interests and hobbies and stuff like that, and can talk about it, and don't sort of freeze up when you first meet people. That's probably my biggest advice. Just talk a lot.
It's a very good thing. Yeah, it's a very good
But
thing.
you know what? It's so funny, because I think it is a lot of the case that we look around the office, and I've said this before. Everyone in the office seems to be a very chatty person, so they've all managed to sort of like, they've got the gift of the gab.
Yeah.
You kind of can learn. I'm not saying I did do this. I'm not advocating, but you can learn on the job. If you're actually a very personable person, people are more likely going to go, actually, yeah, they will. I like them. Wouldn't mind working with them. So let's
Oh, I
give them a
totally
shot.
agree. I totally agree. Say yes to everything, and if they ask you, "Can you do this?" you just say, "Yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
of course I
yeah,
can.
yeah." You got YouTube now; it's fine. Okay, well, look. First things first. We've talked about you, but I know there's something we want to talk about. The trouble with football. There is something you want to get off your chest. So the time has come. Amelia, tell me, what is the trouble with football?
I think the trouble with football is club hierarchies have started to overpower the football side of the game. It used to be so simple. You had a manager who set the identity of the team. They controlled recruitment, tactics in the dressing room. Like, you look at Sir Alex Ferguson or Arsene Wenger, they were the club. Now that model is being replaced. Clubs are running more like corporations with so many different teams. You've got sporting directors, you've got recruitment teams, data analysts, and they all feed into all the decisions. And trust me, as a Chelsea fan, I've seen this all up happen very closely. And the problem is, it's not who's in charge, it's now the responsibility is becoming fragmented. And that lack of clarity is starting to have an impact on the pitch. You know, disjointed tactics, unbalanced squads, constant resets. And when you have those things are diluted by too many voices, you don't get a smarter team, you get a more confused one. And ultimately, the most important voice in football would be the fans. That's the one that actually gets washed away and unheard in the decision-making process.
Wow, that is a lot to unpack. But at the same, but at the same time, I do feel you might have your Chelsea hat on there slightly.
No, I will admit that this will come from a Chelsea angle, but
Totally get it.
there are elements to which there are three basically blocks I kind of want to sort of dissect
Okay,
with you.
let's do it.
Okay. The first one is basically, we do seem to have too many voices when it comes to club hierarchies. I mean, I'm not even just speaking from Chelsea, but you see it with Man United, the problem they've had over years with the Glazers and stuff. But then you also see loads of Americans coming in like, oh, Michael B. Jordan wants to buy it. Oh, Snoop Dogg wants to buy it. Oh, Ryan Reynolds wants to buy it. You suddenly see there's going to be a lot of voices, and it seems to be expanding. It's never just as straightforward as it was maybe in the noughties. So that's the sort of first one that we can get into. The other one is the role of the manager, and it seems to be sort of their responsibilities seem to be diminishing, where they're no longer a manager, like I said with Ferguson and Wenger. They're now more of a head coach. So it's like, right, you deal with tactics on the pitch. You don't actually have a say in the recruitment policy. We're going to give you the players that we decide, sort of thing. That's my other problem. And then the third concern I have is, are we moving into a more American model when it comes to the Premier League, where it's becoming more corporate, more ownership driven, commercialized sort of thing? That they want to sort of, yeah. So you have sort of corporations running it, and they have all these different rules and regulations that come in where they try to sort of mirror how the Americans do it. Another element within that I know is that they want to bring more data into the game, because that's how they do it. It's like in the NBA, NFL sort of thing.
Yeah.
And how they sort of sell tickets. Again, I will come from a Chelsea perspective, because there was recent news this week that a lot of Chelsea fans are pretty upset about in terms of how the tickets are being done. But yeah, my three building blocks basically: too many voices, problems with the title manager versus head coach, and are we moving into an American model in terms of how we view the Premier League?
Okay, Let's do
if
this.
that's okay with
I
you.
like this. No, I love this. I love this. I like the fact that you're prepared, and I wouldn't expect anything less from you, but this is
Of
fantastic.
course.
Right. So, okay. So let's start at the beginning then. The structures themselves, right? And the roles that are within the structures. I mean, across Europe generally, right? There is what is called a brains trust structure. Okay. Probably a lot of people now are used to the idea that there's a CEO, an owner of some sort, and that CEO has a model. They want to make some decisions. They create like a blueprint, and they say, right, this is how we want to be as a club, and now we're going to make decisions based on that blueprint. And that's how they operate that brains trust model. Then what that means is they have to recruit people to work, a management structure. And you're quite right. There's quite a lot of voices in that structure. So a lot of those people are the CAO will probably appoint like a sporting director, or sometimes they're called a director of football. In turn, those guys will usually then recruit some directors and usually a coach and a manager, obviously, of some sort, who best fits that vision of the CEO, that blueprint that they decided for. And then the coach and manager would then play a role in identifying talent. But a lot of the time now, that's also shipped out to data analytic teams and scouting networks that are also managed by the director of football or the sporting director. So you've got all these different responsibilities on finding players and the direction of travel that the club wants to go in. And theoretically, they all work together in synergy. That's the idea, isn't it? So it's the concept is there, and it's been working pretty well for a lot of clubs. But from your perspective now, when you say there's too many voices or it's muddled, what exactly do you mean? Can you give me some examples or how you feel with it?
Well, just as one example, Chelsea have 5 sporting directors. You mentioned a club having 1 sporting director. We have 5, and they're basically all in charge of one little department sort of thing, and they have shared accountability and collaborate rather than them having a single focal point. That's the Blue Co long-term strategy.
Right.
So that's already making it a bit more difficult. Then with Chelsea in particular, we've obviously brought in a new sponsor, which is IFS, which is an AI company, in which now they want to be heavily relying on AI data. So they're bringing in data
Wow.
analysts basically to sift through loads of data. And that's how they want to try and recruit players, rather than just going watching games, scouting like you would back in the olden days, or not even olden days, as you would normally, I guess. It's olden days for me, basically, in Chelsea. But when you've got so many different voices, where you've got Egg Barley, you've got Ted Bowley, you've got various different sporting directors, everyone seems to have influence, but no one has full control.
Mm.
And that's what makes it difficult when it comes to managing a club like Chelsea or Manchester United.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes, well, then who do you blame when there's a problem? Who's the one that's taking accountability?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a really fair point. And you raised Wenger and Ferguson as the examples of the past that obviously worked very well at the time. And they now, the roles that they had as a manager, so they managed the football club, that role now is probably filled by 5 or 6 different people, as you say. There's lots of different people doing slightly parts of what the manager used to do. So then when you're left with a coach, the football coach, the person that stands on the touchline, the person that picks the team, what do you feel is the right approach for employing a coach these days? Because, as a club like Chelsea, let's use them as the example, having 6 managers in the last 4 years, something isn't quite working there, is it? So what is it that's going wrong, or what is it that should be fixed in that sense? Because somewhere along the line, something isn't working.
Well, it's now developed quite this sort of toxic cycle, this constant cycle where it's shortening patience with those higher up at the club, where they're picking the teams, they're recruiting everything, and they're kind of putting it all together, then saying to the head coach, right, we've done all this, go make it work on the pitch. And it's going to be difficult for the head coach because they're not the architect in this. They're just the person who's going to be having to try and make it work, and it doesn't always work because they inherit the same problems. They have to try and constantly switch up their tactics instead of developing a long-term style.
Mhm.
And then that lack of clarity and that pressure on the head coach then ends up having an impact on the players and on the pitch. Disjointed tactics, unbalanced squads, constant resets.
Yeah.
But then for them, for the head coach as well, they don't have that much influence. Like, what I always found bizarre when Enzo Maresca came in is Blueco, the hierarchy at Chelsea, didn't want him having an Instagram account because they didn't want him to be seen as the figurehead of Chelsea. It's like, no, you're here to do the job on the pitch, and
Right.
that's it. I mean, he got one anyways. He didn't listen to them because it's absurd.
I mean, I
It's
suppose
absurd.
that goes to your point maybe about non-sports or non-football, I should say, non-football people maybe running football clubs, and your point around the American side of things. Now, this is not American bashing, right? There are perfectly
No.
good Americans out there that run football clubs really, really well. Okay, but you do make a good point, and the structure. That the counter argument to that is, right, there are some stats around current leadership landscapes across the European leagues, right, and how they work. Your point around the old fashioned versus the new way of doing things, right? I'm trying to remember the name of the actual company that did it. Sportsology Group, right? They did a study in 2023 looking at European club leadership structure, just basically the whole of the top leagues across Europe. And some of the things they found, 68% of teams have an operational chairman, a CEO, who is heavily involved in football-related decisions, okay? More importantly, 84% of teams have a sporting director or equivalent with more than 7+ years experience in football. Okay. And interestingly, when you look at some of the bigger clubs across Europe, things like AC Milan, right? You've got Dortmund, you've got Bayern Munich, right? These have sporting directors that used to be players. These have actual people that have played the game or managed or, been part of the football landscape for a long time. Whereas other clubs that maybe aren't quite successful at the moment don't have that. And that sometimes is where the model goes slightly wrong. You've got the balance of football people and business people slightly too much the wrong way. And maybe that's one of the problems at Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, to go off what you said earlier, not American bashing, because you look at what happened with Wrexham, with Ryan Reynolds
Yeah.
and Rob Back, and that is an example of, yes, they've not come from a footballing background, but they've managed to make it work. But then in the example of Todd Bowley at Chelsea, where he does have assets in the American leagues, he's got some financial assets in those leagues, and he's just come over here and thought, oh, well, if I've done it over there, I'm sure I can just do it in football. It's just
Yeah.
a slightly different shaped ball, isn't it? I'm sure it can work the same thing. But I think that American model where it is kind of just more ownership driven
Yeah.
versus actually like having inherently football based people sort of supporting the club and making the club a better place to work and perform on the pitch. It doesn't quite work that way because uh, with the leagues that you've got in America, they're closed leagues and there's salary caps and they have drafts and stuff like that. Whereas there's so many more assets to the Premier League and the EFL clubs where there isn't a salary cap or anything like that. And I mean, I can't speak for the Americans who obviously do support the American sports out there, but there is such a strong loyalty amongst the fan base with
Yeah.
football.
The other thing you have in the UK that you don't have in America is the consideration of relegation, of moving down a league, of being less profitable. Whereas in America, they're there, and that's just the way it is. The business is a steady business. Ultimately, there's no loss of income. Just because you're bad, people are still going to go and you're not dropping out of the league. Whereas in the UK, that's such a big impact on the way footballers, football managers, and football hierarchy make decisions.
Yeah. And in the example of Chelsea, where you've got these owners who are willing to spend, we're called the £1 billion bottle jobs because of how much money we spent, but we can't get the results on the pitch. And we could really do with being in the Champions League and having that money to fall back on. And yet, I don't even think we're going to get Europe that season. That's going to be really concerning for them when they go, oh, actually, we don't have that money. We can't actually go spending like that because we're not getting the results on the pitch to be able to sort of back it up financially later down in the season.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's the difference, isn't it? That when we talk about club hierarchies, generally speaking, Chelsea have put in place a hierarchy that is common nowadays. It's a thing that works across the board, across European football. There are just a few decisions maybe that have been made in a certain way that haven't quite played off. And so, yeah, no, I totally understand your point. The other thing I was going to raise was other ways to do things like this, other ways to structure your club. Obviously, in Spain, there are a few clubs that are, slightly different to the way the structure works across most of the clubs in Europe. Real Madrid and Barcelona are the big ones. Obviously, they're practically social clubs, right? They're owned by members and they elect a president. So although there is an element of ownership about it, it means that the leadership is part football, part politics, almost in some respects. The presidents actually run on election promises and say that they're going to do this in the transfer market or we're going to sign that person. One of the good things about it is that you create a sort of a strong cultural DNA in the club, because what you're doing is the community are the ones that are making the decision. They're creating the identity. Do you feel that the way that the Chelsea club is currently structured needs to change then? And if so, what would you do to change it?
Definitely there needs to be some kind of shake up. And it's funny you mentioned about those models where you've got elected fans essentially helping to run the club, because I've never seen such a disconnect between the owners of Chelsea and the
Mhm.
Chelsea fan group as I have now. So even this week, it was announced that for next season, they're going to change how they sell the tickets. Where if you're a loyal fan, you've built up points as a Chelsea club member, you now have to apply in advance for a home game ticket. And then once that application process is shut, everyone just gets entered into a ballot. So it doesn't matter how many loyalty points that you've built up over the season or so, you are going to get chucked into a ballot. So where you may have been able to get a couple of tickets per season, you're lucky if you're going to get two or three next season.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
that's scary. That's scary. I don't
Yeah.
know of any other club that does that.
No. And then what's a bit frustrating is Todd Bowley's got shares in the ticketing system that is actually organising this. And it's just sad that it seems that so loyal home fans won't be rewarded for their loyalty. But it actually seems if you're abroad and you want to go and see Chelsea and you want to go and buy a ticket, it's actually a lot easier if you're a tourist basically coming over for the weekend to buy a ticket than it is for a fan that's been going all their life.
I mean, that is something that does. Obviously, I've had people on here before talking. I had Joe, the Brighton fan, who was talking about the cost of a match day, and one of the things we touched on was obviously ticket tourism and the people that come from different countries. Yeah, we're an international game. We've got international players. Lots of people want to come and see their players, and I don't think any of us would want to stop the international fans coming to the games, but it shouldn't be at the cost of the local historic fans that want to come to the ground, that have had season tickets or have earned those loyalty points over the years for supporting their club.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've been fortunate to get a ticket, but it might be like through a friend sort of thing. Like trying to get a ticket on the website is almost impossible sometimes as a club fan. And I've been fortunate to get a ticket, and then I will see tourists and they just want to be there on their phone. Obviously, they're soaking in the atmosphere, but they're filming practically the whole game on their phone. They're not actually paying attention to what's seeing on the pitch. They'll arrive like 15 minutes late. So everyone's kind of standing up sort of thing at a crucial point. And I'm like, I appreciate that people want to come and see the game, but it can be a bit frustrating.
Yeah.
But um, yeah,
No,
it's
I get it. I totally get it. That does sound worrying. If ticketing goes in that direction across the board, that is a worry, and that is something again that goes back to the concept of how your club and the hierarchy, the businessmen behind the club, make decisions and the direction that they want to take the club in. And I think that's happened in lots of different places. We've had a lot of news recently about Sheffield Wednesday, and at the moment, thankfully, it's turned into a good news story finally, where they've been now getting new owners and things like that.
short.
But they've had some terrible history. myself as a Brighton fan, I've had horrific history, over the 2000s and, not having a club practically, not having a ground, all that sort of stuff that's happened because of bad owners, because of bad structures when it comes to management. So we can't let that happen again as fans. And there has to be a voice for us as fans to get ourselves at the top table and making sure that our voices are heard. And some clubs do have supporters clubs, they do have voices like fan advisory boards and things like
Yeah.
that. And that should be part of any club, I think, when you talk about hierarchy. There should be an avenue for the hierarchy to be able to talk to the fans, or at least a delegate of the fans, to have those voices heard.
But it's so I know Chelsea do these sort of focus groups, and they did one at the beginning of the season where they basically said, "Can you tell us all the problems that you think there are going on at Chelsea?" And they said they want more experience. They don't like this this recruitment process, and it didn't seem to go anywhere. It kind of
Mm,
landed on deaf ears. So it's all fine and well saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to do a focus group because we want to hear what the fans have to say about how the club is run."
yeah.
But it's when you don't actually do anything. Funnily enough, there have been reports that actually coming into next season, Chelsea are now going to be looking into getting more experienced players. But it's actually since we had the outburst from Enzo Fernandez and Marc Cucurella that actually now this seems to be following, because I was probably in the unpopular camp where I actually didn't mind what they said because of the fact, actually, okay, no, now it's come from a player. It's all because I don't think anyone in the board really cares about the Chelsea fans. If they're out doing protests every other week, that
Yeah.
doesn't bother them. But it's actually, oh no, now we've got players actually saying
It's
this as
the
well. Maybe it's something we should be considering.
Yeah, I mean, it's the embarrassment factor, isn't it? I think as soon as people inside the club are now saying it publicly, that's when it really makes a difference to the way the club is run. And the thing I want to quickly touch on though with you is you talked about the sort of the Americanization of the way clubs are run. And I just want to touch on that a little bit more with you. So what do you think has been the main difference for Chelsea, as that is your experience currently? Chelsea now run by this current Bluecoat group, which is heavily Americanized, let's put it that way, compared to previous owners. What do you feel is where it's sort of changed mostly?
Um, I think we do see it in the recruitment process where we have players come through and we spend a lot of money on players we haven't heard of, like Mikhailo Mudryk back when we signed him. I remember it was so funny because we spent so much, like near 90 million on this guy from Ukraine that no one had heard of. I remember Chelsea had to put his Instagram bio in their Instagram bio because they wanted to make sure that people were tagging to find out who this man was. And this seems to be the case with a lot of players where we spend a lot of money on these younger players that no one's really heard of, but it's because the owners are relying on data
Yep.
basically to give them all this information. Like, oh no, we want him because of this stat and this stat and this stat, rather than actually just looking on the pitch saying, hey, that guy's playing great for Barcelona or for Real Madrid. Let's try and get him in. I'm sure it is happening to some
Well,
degree.
yeah, I mean, no, it's a good point. It's good. It's just really nice hearing a Chelsea fan saying they have to Google their own players. I love that because as a Brighton fan, I've been doing that for years when we sign someone random that we then
Normally
later
we just
sell.
sign one of
Yeah,
your lot.
exactly. It's
It's
a
a
lot
lot
easier.
easier.
Chelsea and Hove Albion are still doing very well. So the issue I've got with that is it just makes me laugh because I think there's a little part of that that's sort of missing, and let's touch on it, right? This recent history, let's put it that way, of Chelsea taking Brighton everything, right? Whether that be manager, players, director of football, coaching staff, goalkeeping coach, technical director. I don't know if you've taken a groundsman yet, but yeah, basically you've taken a lot of people from Brighton, right? The thing that I think is possibly where the new ownership have maybe missed a step is possibly relying on data only. And I think you touched on it there yourself about the scouting. The scouting isn't just about scouting them on the pitch. It's about knowing about them, their background. It's about knowing what makes them tick, what type of person they are, whether they're going to fit into the culture of the place that you're going to drop them into the middle of suddenly to live. All those sorts of things is probably well, I know for a fact, is what Brighton spend a lot of their time on. Moises Caicedo is a really good example because he's been part of both of our clubs, and we spent over 18 months recruiting him. And I don't mean scouting him, I mean recruiting him. We took 18 months trying to work out whether he was going to work and bring him over to the UK for lots of different reasons, because of ownerships, because of other things as well, personalities, family background, all that sort of stuff. And it took us 18 months to actually get to the point where they were agreeing to sell him to us. And I think your example of Mudryk is a really good example, because that's someone who, like you say, popped up out of nowhere. And, he's had his troubles, let's put it that way, at this moment in time. We know that there are some real big issues with him, and he hasn't played for obvious reasons. So anyone doesn't know, Google it. But there are, there are bad news stories that are out there because of the situation of plucking someone just purely out of data.
Yeah, there just doesn't seem to be a sole focus point. Like, right, how can we build this team? It's kind of like they've gone to the big supermarkets, like, right, chuck that in there. Oh, I fancy that. Oh, that looks quite nice. Chucking in all these ingredients, and they've gone to the head coach, right, go and bake a cake with that. And it's like, well, how am I going to bake a cake? I don't know why you bought this. Why have you bought that? Why have you bought that? And it's not going to work. And I think that's kind of what's missing with this ownership, where they see all these shiny prospects, but actually, no, it's not about the most expensive and data-driven players that you think are going to work. It's actually, no, you need to find assets to build the team. Like, one of the problems that Maresca had was obviously when Levi Colwill got an ACL injury in the summer, he was missing a centre back. Maresca was desperately asking, please, please, please just give me an experienced centre back. And they went, no. And then they'll bring in someone like Gerald Hatton, who's actually done pretty well for us, I will admit. But in terms of like bringing in these nobodies, like, no, we want this person. But it's that I did really feel bad for Maresca when it came to the end of his tenure, where he just wanted that small concession.
Yeah.
Because you should be able to recruit experience, because you can't go on to be winning Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues.
I totally agree with you. There is the whole point of having a blueprint and a base model is one thing, but you do need to be able to bend depending on circumstances. One of the biggest things that happened in recent history in Chelsea, again, you look at it and you say the hierarchy came in and they put down their blueprint, and suddenly there was this bomb squad, as they nicknamed it. There was this huge amount of players that were just surplus anymore. They weren't needed. And you had so many people in the squad in Chelsea that you had to literally put them to the one side and say, all right, we'll try and sell them at some point if we can. We'll just leave them over there trading on another pitch, and we'll concentrate on these guys here. That shows, doesn't it?
And I think as well, what's difficult now is that when Chelsea under the old ownership, you'd have managers in like Mourinho's and Conte's and whatnot, and they were given time to sort of like, right, let me sort of recruit my players. And with time, you then built the respect. Have we seen recently with Rosinia, and I mentioned it earlier, I think everyone's patience is shortened now when you've got these sort of head coach figures like, right, we're going to do all the work, but you just need to go and do the tactics on the pitch and win us some games. If you don't do that, then you're going to be out. And with that, it's very difficult for managers to be given time to actually like get their points across, actually try and develop these players and also develop their respect. I mean, by the end, when it came to playing you guys and Rosinia got the sack, everyone just kind of assumed it was like, oh, well, the players have no respect for Rosinia. And you can't buy that. You can't buy respect. You have to earn respect.
Yeah, but that comes with time, and as
exactly.
you said, you don't give your managers recently, anyway, with the new ownership, you don't give them time. Listen, before we wrap this up, I just want to check any other business. Is there anything we haven't covered out of your trouble with football that you really want to get off your chest?
I think I've done my talking. I think
Have you? Are you okay? You feeling better?
I'm quite happy with my cake analogy, though. I've made that up on the spot.
I liked that. I liked it. It was good. Don't say you made it up on the spot. Say that I've been planning this for weeks.
No, that was preempted. Yeah, that was preempted. But I'm so going to use that now.
I love that. Just work with it. We could do a whole video and visual and everything. It'd be great. Listen, thank you so much, Amelia, for joining me this week.
Thank you for having me. I've had a good time.
That's absolutely fine. And thank you to everyone for listening and watching on YouTube to The Trouble with Football. And just remember that in football, annoyances are what keeps us talking. Join us next time for more chat about The Trouble with Football.